So they said that XRP was dead. So why did the whales quietly bet $300 million that it's coming back to life? Now, I'm going to be honest. When I saw an analyst on X proclaim that XRP is dead, I nearly did a spit take with my coffee. But not because I fully believed it, but because I kind of brought it back a lot of memories, if I should say. Now, this isn't the first time that I've heard XRP doom bell toll, right? If I had $1 for every crypto is dead headline, then I could probably buy a fair few more XRP. And the last time that rang, or at least they rang the bell for XRP, something rather unexpected actually happened. So, flashback to mid-2024, XRP was just drifting around 38 cents, barely moving for weeks. The vibes were pretty grim. Everyone was calling it a zombie coin, saying that it was game over. Now, I vividly remember checking the price every morning and seeing the rather same number, wondering if it would ever move again. Friends told me that I was crazy to still hold on to any of it. But then, out of nowhere, XRP took off like a rocket by late 2024. One week it was half asleep, and the next it was flying. It was the classic calm before the storm scenario, and it caught a whole ton of people off guard. Now I'm talking jaw to the floor moments for those who had completely written it off. I mean, who remembers all those influencers saying, not buying any of these dino coins? So, here we are in 2025, and I'm getting serious deja vu. Now, that analyst, his name was 𝗗𝗶𝘀𝗰cie. Wasn't just being dramatic about it, he was pointing out a bit of a pattern. XRP's price is sliding down in this neat little downward channel. It's looking weak. But at the same time, a long-term trend line, think of XRP's kind of heartbeat here, is actually still ticking upwards. So it's kind of like holding a beach ball underwater. The pressure is building quietly. Now, historically, when you kind of get a falling price channel alongside a rising average or moving average like this one, it's kind of often the final kind of shakeout before a rather big move upwards, not the start of a death spiral. In other words, XRP is dead was kind of tongue-in-cheek. It's kind of like saying everyone thinks it's dead, which might actually be a rather bullish sign. Now, he basically kind of meant that skepticism is kind of peaking just before a potential recovery. And I have to admit, it kind of got my attention. Now, could history really be repeating itself? Could we be at that exact point where gloom and doom hit at their peak, right before the big rebound? Now my heart is beating just a little bit faster, just thinking about it. And this is where it gets even more interesting. While the retail crowd, that's us regular people, are kind of bored or even just panicked, guess who's actually been quietly stacking and stocking their XRP bags? Yeah, whales. And I mean big whales. Just over 3 days, some deep-pocketed players snapped up 120 million XRP. So let's kind of put that into perspective here. That's about $300 million worth of XRP bought in a long weekend. Now, these are not your average Joes. These are addresses holding between 10 million and 100 million XRP each. We call them whales for a reason. It's kind of like finding out that a bunch of Wall Street sharks have been shopping while everyone else is screaming doom and gloom. Their collective holdings jumped from under 7.8 billion XRP to around 7.91 billion in just a short span. Now that's a pretty huge leap. In fact, the last time that these whales had that much XRP was back in mid-August. Back then, they quietly offloaded some of their stash and surprise, surprise, XRP's price took a hit earlier this month. Now, they've kind of started buying it all once again, and as if kind of anticipating maybe something big is actually just around the corner. So, what do they know that we don't, right? One of my mentors used to say, watch what the big money does, not what it actually says. Now, it's almost like having insider information, except it's all up in the air, right? Or maybe it's all actually out in the open, I should say, if you kind of know where to look. So picture this, right? If you're at a poker table, right? Everyone is kind of folding, saying the game is over. But then you notice the richest players quietly adding more chips to their stack. That's kind of when, at least that's kind of what this kind of whale action actually feels like. Now, I'm watching this and I'm thinking, should I follow the smart money? It's tempting, right? If the whales are loading up, they must see something on the horizon. But the cautious part of me remembers that chasing whales can be dangerous for minnows like us. Right? They can afford to kind of be wrong or maybe even wait a little bit longer, whereas we might not be able to. Still, it definitely kind of makes me want to pay more attention. Right? By the way, it's stuff like this that really intrigues me, and if it intrigues you and you want to discuss it with other people, then we do have a free educational Discord server. There's a link in the description down below. It's full of people who love digging into the on-chain data and market clues, and honestly, having a community like that keeps me sane in these kind of wild crypto times. Now, amid all of this analysis and late night reading, I stumbled upon something pretty cool that I want to share. A project called Unity. Now, this wasn't even on my radar until someone in our community mentioned running crypto nodes, and down the rabbit hole I went. Now, here's a little bit of a tangent, but I did come across something on my research here, something called Unity, which was actually something that's been in our Discord server. One of our members pinged over, and I did have to jump on into this. So you might be thinking, what are Unity nodes? Well, you got to think of it as a community-driven project where crypto tech meets real-world utility. The idea is actually pretty cool. Turn your smartphone into a part of a global network and earn crypto for helping out. More specifically, Unity nodes lets regular people like you and I use their smartphones to verify the telecoms network, basically to help check that cell phone networks are actually working properly. And for your efforts, you get rewarded in crypto for doing it. Now, here's how I understand it, but please bear with me. I've only just kind of got into this one, and there's still a bit of a learning curve going on. But anyway, what you do is you install a Unity app on your phone, and that app will basically make verification calls and pings to test the local mobile network. So every time that your phone helps verify that, let's say a cell tower is up and running, or maybe even detects a problem, that information gets recorded to a blockchain. Now, they're using something called the World Mobile Chain, which is actually tied to the World Mobile project in the Cardano ecosystem that's now gone multi-chain. Anyway, in return for your efforts, you actually will earn crypto rewards. And they're not just talking about some sketchy no-name token that nobody actually wants to use. The rewards can be paid and withdrawn in major cryptocurrencies like BTC, Ethereum, ADA, and a whole host of others, maybe even XRP in the future. So it's kind of like you're mining, but instead of actually crunching these pointless math puzzles, your phone is actually doing useful work by checking the real-world cell service. It's pretty wild, right? Now, to enable all of this, their system of Unity nodes and Unity licenses. Now, a Unity node is basically like a package, and it's actually an NFT-based package, actually, that you can purchase. And it comes with a bunch of licenses, 200 licenses per node, which allows up to 200 different smartphones to join the network under that one node. Now, it's not cheap to get a node, right? Last time I looked, the price was around $5,000 for just one. But they're also kind of limited in number, which kind of gives it a bit of exclusivity. But the cool part is this, that those 200 licenses can actually be distributed. You can run a bunch of phones yourself if you've got a fleet of old devices lying around, or you could actually lease out a bunch of licenses to other people who want to participate. Now, the whole model ends up like a mini decentralized telecoms operation. The node owners and phone operators split the rewards from the network service fees that the telecom companies pay for those verification services. Now, you might be thinking, this sounds a little bit complicated, and yeah, it's a bit of a new concept, but what stuck with me is how real it actually is. Like, they're not promising you guaranteed riches or some utopian future currency. They're basically just saying, help us improve global telecommunications, and we'll actually compensate you in crypto. Now, it reminded me of kind of like the World Mobile Network with their nodes, right? If you've kind of heard of those, it's where people kind of get these nodes and then basically they can earn crypto for providing, basically like data, mobile data, in these kind of blackout spots. Except with Unity, they're actually using mobile phones and actually the cell networks themselves. So it's kind of the same kind of idea, but this time it's crowdsourcing an infrastructure that complements the World Mobile Network. And obviously you get rewarded with these crypto incentives. I found this whole thing very fascinating. It's kind of the development that doesn't maybe grab the headlines in the same way as we have with some of these other XRP kind of news pieces, but it probably should, because it shows how blockchain technology can tie into everyday life. And I'll admit, I was thinking, I have an old Android phone, just lying around. Maybe I could, put it to work. So I actually did go ahead and buy a Unity node, and I'm going to set something up just over here on the desk, right? And I'm going to be earning maybe a little bit of Bitcoin or ADA on the side, just by letting it act like a mini kind of cell tower, right? As a monitor, if you will. Even if it's just a little bit of pocket change, it's something that you can actually do versus just waiting on some kind of crazy price miracle, right? So I've jumped in, I've purchased one node, 200 licenses, and we'll kind of report back on how all of that kind of works. I did find it a pretty refreshing idea for kind of mining cryptocurrency. But let me be very clear here. I'm not saying that Unity nodes are going to make you rich or that it's the next big thing. This is definitely not an advertisement for it. It's just my own personal discovery and my own experiment with what I've done by buying one node, right? 200 licenses, and I'm going to get a whole bunch of phones operating and running on it and see what the rewards are like. It's like any project, right? It will have its risks and, it might not pan out. They have got a lot of information on their website. There's a link to it down in the description down below, by the way. They've also got a rewards calculator that you can explore as well. Now, the reason that I bought one is because I want to see whether or not this actually does play out and earns me a nice passive income whilst I kind of get on with my day-to-day life, right? It is kind of a hands-off approach. It's going to be interesting to see how the experiment pans out. Anyway, I stumbled down this kind of down-to-earth project, and it has got me genuinely excited. So you can let me know in the comments down below if you've heard of them or whether or not you're interested in Unity, or maybe join us in the free Discord that's linked in the description, and we can talk about how everything is going in more detail down there. But it's not wild speculation, but this is actually more for the innovation and the kind of new solutions that we're finding in the space. Now, I don't know if any XRP whales are directly involved with something like Unity. Probably not. Whales have their own kind of priorities. But as someone who's in crypto for the long haul, knowing that projects like this exist made me feel better about the whole space as a whole, right? Now, if the foundation is strong, well, the wild price swings start to feel a little bit less scary, right? All right. Let's get back to the big question then. Is XRP really dead this time? Or are we on to the cusp of another surprise rally? Well, let's sum it all up with what we've got going on. A historical chart pattern that looks uncannily similar to the last time that everyone doubted XRP. And we know how all of that ended, right? Whales are basically putting their money where everyone else's fear is. And on top of all of that, there's one more potential catalyst just hanging up in the air. The SEC and those XRP ETF decisions. Now, unless you've been off the grid, you probably know that crypto ETFs are the hot topic lately. And guess what? XRP is now part of that story. The SEC is set to decide on a whole bunch of XRP ETF applications in October. That's literally just a couple of weeks away. So if even one of those gets a green light, it could be a total game changer. We're talking about opening the doors for big institutional money to flow on into XRP. Now remember how Bitcoin pumped when ETF hype started. We might see something rather similar here. They say approval could actually open the floodgates for capital inflows, and I do not doubt it. Right? Imagine pension funds, hedge funds, and the like suddenly having an easy, regulated way to get exposure to XRP. The buzz alone would be pretty insane. In fact, some of this optimism might already be kind of simmering into the market. XRP's price has been pretty resilient. As we kind of speak, it's kind of hovering around $2.80, almost like a coiled spring, ready to snap. And let's not forget, the final quarter of the year is historically a bullish season for crypto. So if we mix that usual Q4 enthusiasm with a potential ETF approval, you can see why those whales might be so eager to buy right now. Now, I've even heard people speculating on some pretty big price targets. There are folks throwing out numbers like $10 by the end of the year, and look, I'll be thrilled if that happens, but I'm not planning my retirement around it. $10 would be a pretty massive leap from here. The fact that some respected voices even think that it's possible, though, shows how bullish this setup actually looks to them. It's the kind of thing where if everything goes perfectly, the pattern plays out, whales keep on buying, ETFs get approved, and the stars align, then yeah, maybe we'll hit some pretty crazy numbers beyond $10. But that's an awful lot of ifs and buts, right? So let's play devil's advocate for just a second. What if all of this goes south? The SEC might delay those ETF decisions, or even reject them outright. I doubt this because I'm actually going to record another video straight after this one that's going to go out on the Cheeky Crypto News channel, where I think some pretty bullish news has just broken. Anyway, wouldn't be the first time that we maybe would have seen the SEC kind of sour on the crypto party after all, but I don't think it's going to happen. If it does happen, for whatever reason, that's a lot of potential excitement could fizzle out pretty quickly. Or what if some whales decide, I've had enough or made enough, and then dump their 50 million XRP next week? Well, that could also see a pretty sharp pullback, right? So XRP and crypto as a whole has a pretty way of kind of humbling everyone who thinks that they've got it all figured out. I kind of remind myself of that daily, right? Even if I am hopeful, I know I also need to stay grounded from time to time. Now, this might just shock you, but I'm not a financial advisor, and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile, and you could lose all of the money that you invest. You should always do your own research and consult a qualified professional. After all, your investments are entirely your responsibility, and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses, and this video is for entertainment and educational purposes only. All right, had to kind of get that out there. So what do we make of all of this? Well, for me, the takeaway is a mix of excitement and caution. I've seen a setup like this before, and it gives me hope that we might actually be on the brink of something big with XRP. But I'm also reminding myself, and all of you guys, that nothing is grounded, or guaranteed, I should say, in crypto. It's funny though, isn't it? Years ago, I might have dismissed all of this as just pure hopium. Now I see it as a case study in keeping an open mind and looking at all of the data. Right? When someone, or at least maybe even everyone else, is kind of either euphoric or even declaring the doom, the truth is usually somewhere in the middle of all of it. Maybe about to swing from one extreme to the other when you kind of least expect it. Now, I remember people saying that Bitcoin is dead after the 2018 crash, and again in 2020. Those were actually some of the best times to accumulate quietly. Now, I'm getting a rather similar vibe with XRP right now. It doesn't guarantee that XRP will explode next month or even this month. Actually, now, because this video goes out in October, it will be this month. But it definitely does mean that I will be paying more and much closer attention, and of course, staying prepared for whatever outcome actually comes, right? And speaking of being prepared, if you are thinking about jumping into the market, it's totally your call. It's not advice, of course. Make sure that you are using platforms that you do trust. Now, personally, I use exchanges like Blowfin and BitGet for a lot of my trades. And for full transparency, I have a link to our website which contains affiliate links for those, exchanges down in the description, which actually, if you sign up and trade through them, support the channel at no extra cost to yourself. So if you do use them, it helps out an absolute ton. So thank you for that. But either way, you got to stick to good security practices. Enable two-factor authentication. Double check addresses. You know the drill by this point. The bottom line, XRP isn't looking very dead to me. In fact, it might be gearing up for one heck of a plot twist. Now, we have charts kind of hinting at a bit of a comeback. Whales betting big that the comeback is coming, and maybe even an ETF wildcard is in the mix. Now, I'm buckled in for October, right? They call it Uptober for a reason, and I'll definitely be keeping the conversation going in our Discord community that I mentioned earlier. It's going to be an interesting ride, to say the least. For now, guys, make sure to smash that like button if you found this useful and informative, subscribe, and I will catch you all in the next one.